Hey Maya, it's Julia, the ex-English major, and today I'm going to be gushing about one of my favorite books from when I was 16 years old, Wuthering Heights. So, the movie is coming out soon for Wuthering Heights, starring Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie. Very, very excited for this movie. Will I be seeing it when it comes out? Yes, absolutely. Is this movie going to be Wuthering Heights? Nope, not even a little bit. So I know that there are plenty of discussions on the internet talking about how this movie is not going to be accurate. I've seen some really, really funny tweets. This is not going to be that. So I'm not here to be bashing about the movie. I too will be falling in love again and again with Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, but it's not going to be Wuthering Heights. And so the purpose of this video is to kind of go through a deep dive of the summary of the story. This is groundbreaking. You've never seen a girl on the internet talking about a book with pictures. It's never been done before. So this is truly groundbreaking. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a deep dive of the plot of Wuthering Heights here, get most of the story beat, so that way if you are watching the movie, maybe you've only skim read the book, or you read the book like me when you were in 10th grade for the first time, whether you loved it or hated it, this will be about the summary of the book, so that way when you go in to see the movie that you are able to kind of notice where it's actually different, so that way you are not going through and thinking that the book is the same as the movie. Please, for the love of God, if you are a high school student who has to write a paper on this and you didn't read the book, I'm sure that the first thing that you would do is go to ChatGPT anyway to write your essay, but please do not go watch this movie and then think that that's a substitute for the book to go ahead and try, writing your essay. It's not going to be that story. So let me go ahead and get into the actual story that is Wuthering Heights. In Wuthering Heights, let me go ahead and set the scene for you. We are in the early 1800s. It's 1801, 1802, somewhere around there. And a fictional place. But on this fictional place, we have moors. Now, what is a moor? This is a moor with all of its quirks and features. So think spooky, think gray, think we've got rolling hills and heather. And on this moor, in this fictional area, we have these two houses. We have Wuthering Heights and we have Thrushcross Grange. And we are following our main character here named Lockwood, who he is kind of the stand-in for just kind of your everyday person. And Lockwood is writing down the history of these two houses as it has been told to him. So everything is kind of filtered through whoever is telling the story to Lockwood, and then Lockwood is writing it down. One thing that is important to know about this story, everyone is messy, everyone is unlikable, everyone is all for the drama, it's all very chaotic, it's all very messy. Think reality TV, think Love Island, think just people making absolute fools of themselves. That is what we're getting into with Wuthering Heights. It's juicy, it's all gossip being written down by this kind of busybody, and he's kind of the outsider writing down what happened in this area on these moors. So Lockwood has just moved in and he is renting this house called Thrushcross Grange. I will probably be calling it the Grange simply because Thrushcross Grange is long and weird. But Lockwood is here. He's staying at the Grange, and the Grange is owned by this man named Heathcliff, who lives at Wuthering Heights. And so Lockwood decides, hey, I am renting this house out. Let me go over to Wuthering Heights to go meet my neighbors and meet the owner of this house. So he goes over there, and when he gets to Wuthering Heights, he sees two people. He sees Joseph, and Joseph is, in my mind, I read it as like Scottish. Joseph speaks in a really, really thick accent. Nobody can really understand him. And when you're reading the book, it's written out, like his accent is written out. So it's really hard to understand Joseph. It's hard for Lockwood to understand Joseph, and it's hard for you as the reader to understand Joseph. But Joseph, one defining characteristic about him, my man loves the Bible. So you will not be able to understand him, and he's always preaching. And then we have Heathcliff here as well. And let me kind of give you a brief description of Heathcliff from the 3rd page of the book for what he looks like. All right, so here is our description of our Jacob Elordi character. But Mr. Heathcliff forms a singular contrast to his abode and style of living. He is a dark-skinned, and then there is a slur for Romani people. So he is a dark-skinned, in aspect, in dress and manners, a gentleman. That is as much a gentleman as many a country squire. So we have our dark-skinned slur of a character, Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff. Jacob Elordi is not my Heathcliff. That's no. Much better. So I love Jacob Elordi. I thought he did a great job in Frankenstein, but a key point of the story is Heathcliff is being mistreated and just othered because of his skin. People make fun of his hair. They talk about his dark hair, his dark eyes, his dark skin. He's constantly being called a slur. He's kind of racially ambiguous, but it's really clear he is not white. So as much as I love Jacob Elordi, when you are watching the movie, that's not Heathcliff. This will not be the first movie to cast a white man as this character, but he is very distinctly not white. Throughout the entire book, his race is an important feature. This isn't just like some sort of like woke DEI hire. Like, it's part of the story is that he's not white. So Lockwood is here and he is visiting Joseph and Heathcliff, and Joseph and Heathcliff do not want Lockwood here. Lockwood's not getting the hint. And so they're having dinner and Lockwood decides he's going to go home because it's getting late, but he tells them he's going to be back tomorrow. And both Joseph and Heathcliff are like, we don't really want you back here. Over in kind of the periphery is this housekeeper. We don't know her name yet, but she's kind of dressed a little bit provocatively for the time. He sees a shoulder. So Lockwood's like, who is this woman? But otherwise, like mostly it's just Joseph and Heathcliff, and they have a ton of dogs as well. My dogs get a character sheet. These guys don't really want Lockwood here. Lockwood says, I'm going to be back tomorrow. They're like, please don't. He's like, I'll be back tomorrow. So he goes to Thrushcross Grange, and then the next day he wakes up and it's snowing, it's dark, it's gloomy, and Lockwood decides to come over to Wuthering Heights, even though it's very clear that he was not invited. When he gets there, Joseph and Heathcliff both are not there, but he notices this young girl. And she's like, the oldest she could be is like 20. She looks like an older teenager. We're guessing she's probably around 18. And she is really, really pretty, but she is not behaving properly. She doesn't even offer Lockwood tea when he shows up. And he's like, that's weird. Does this girl, she's really well dressed, but she's not behaving like a lady should. And then there's another boy who is similar in her age, but he is scruffy. He is dirty. He is uncouth, he swears. And so Lockwood is like, who are these two? What are they doing here? I don't understand. And then Joseph and Heathcliff come home. And so Lockwood is having dinner with Joseph and Heathcliff and the two, and he's kind of trying to figure out what is going on with these people here at Wuthering Heights. So Lockwood goes and he's like, hey, Heathcliff, your wife is really pretty. And Heathcliff is like, that is not my wife. And Lockwood's kind of like, oh, cool. That makes sense because you're like twice her age. Like you're in your 40s. I've heard it happen before, but it'd be a little weird. So Lockwood's like, oh, well then your daughter-in-law and your son, like they make a good couple. And this man is like mad when he hears this, and he says, I am not this man's son. My name is Hareton Earnshaw, and this man is not my father. He makes it very clear. And so Lockwood's kind of looking to Heathcliff for like, hey, what's going on with the vibe? And Heathcliff tells him that Kathy is his daughter-in-law, but that Kathy was not married to Hareton, and Hareton is not his son. Kathy was married to Heathcliff's son. And he goes, oh, okay, interesting. And so it's getting late and it's still snowing out. And so Lockwood sees the time and he's like, I got to get home, but it's already dark. It's snowing. I don't know my way home. Will someone give me directions? And they're all like, nope, bye. And so he takes his lantern and he's kind of wandering the moor, and Joseph sees the lantern and thinks it's a robber. So he sets the dogs out on this robber. So the dogs come, they attack Lockwood. Lockwood is trying to fight them off, and he is rescued by the housekeeper that we saw briefly earlier. Her name is Zilla. And Zilla calls the dogs off and she kind of rescues Lockwood, and she's like, hey, it's dark, it's snowing, you were just attacked. Let me set up a room for you in Wuthering Heights. You'll spend the night here and then you'll go home afterward. And so Lockwood is grateful. Nobody else knows that Lockwood is in the house, but Zilla makes up a room for him, says goodnight, and Lockwood is a little bit of a nosy, and he sees that carved on the windowsill is this name Catherine over and over again, but Catherine has different last names every time she carves it. So we've got Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Linton, Catherine Heathcliff, and Lockwood is like, interesting. I want to investigate more. And he finds this journal. And this journal is old. This journal looks like it's probably like 25 years old. He's looking at the dates, and some of the dates are really, really old. And it's written by a girl named Catherine. And he knows it can't be this Catherine because that she wasn't even born when this journal was written. So he's got this interesting Catherine, and he reads it. And he is finding out that this girl named Catherine, who's writing this journal, is kind of lamenting over her brother and how badly her brother is treating this man named Heathcliff. So Lockwood's like, interesting, let me read more. So he's reading more and more of these stories, and finally it's getting late, and so he decides to go to bed, and he starts having these nightmares. He's having nightmares of Joseph giving sermons, which I think is kind of funny, but he's having these nightmares that kind of echo what's been happening in this book that he was reading, and he wakes up to this mysterious tapping on his window. And again, it's spooky, it's dark, it's been snowing, he's in this strange kind of spooky house. And so Lockwood decides he's going to open up the window, and it's got to be a tree. So he's going to open up the window, kind of move the branches, maybe break the branches off so that we stop tapping. So he opens the window and grabs what he thinks is the tree, and it ends up being a hand of this ghostly woman. And this ghostly woman is probably about the same age as Kathy is. She's, late teens, early 20s. And this ghostly woman says, my name is Catherine. And Lockwood freaks out. And Catherine's like, let me in. I've been on the moors for about 20 years. Let me in. And Lockwood's like, heck no, I'm not letting this ghost in the house. And so he starts screaming. And remember, nobody but Zilla knows that he's in the house. So when Lockwood starts screaming, Heathcliff comes in and starts to investigate. And he's like, dude, what the heck are you doing? And Lockwood says, there was a ghost. She said her name was Catherine. And he sees Heathcliff, and Heathcliff's entire demeanor changes when he hears that this ghost is named Catherine. And Heathcliff forces Lockwood out of the room, but Lockwood's still in earshot. And he hears Heathcliff, and Heathcliff is weeping. He's crying. He's opening the windows, and he's saying, Catherine, come back. Kathy, come in, come back. And so Lockwood is like, that is the weirdest morning. It's 4 a.m. at this point, and all of them are awake because it was disturbed. Like they were screaming, there was crying, it was all this. So everyone's awake. We've got everyone kind of in the breakfast room, and then Heathcliff comes down the stairs and joins them, and Heathcliff is fully composed. So before he was like screaming, gnashing his teeth, crying, and now he's buttoned up and kind of how he always is, his little quiet introvert self who's like kind of rude and terse. And he says, hey, the sun is rising. You need to go home. So I'm going to walk you until you can see the Grange over the hills so you don't get lost. And then you need to leave. And Lockwood is like, yeah, I do. And so Heathcliff walks him until they see the Grange. He comes in, and everyone at the Grange thought that Lockwood died. They thought that he got lost on the moors, so they're really excited to see him. But Lockwood spurns everyone. He locks himself in his room, and he's like, I don't want to see anybody. And so eventually he unlocks the door, and now he's gotten sick, right? He was out in the cold, in the snow. He was attacked by dogs. He did not sleep. And so now he's ill, and the housekeeper, Nellie, comes in to help him. And so Nellie is absolutely my favorite character. Nellie is nosy. Nellie is a little gossip. She was always like, oh, no, you can tell me any of your secrets. And then she goes and she spills them all. So Nellie brings Lockwood some soup. When Nellie comes to bring Lockwood the soup, the first thing she asks is, how is Catherine? How is Kathy? And so Lockwood's like, I mean, she's weird, but she's good, I guess. And so he's trying to find out from Nellie, like, what is going on at these houses. And so Nellie decides that she's going to tell him the tale of what happened between Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange in the past. So now we are flashing back, and our main story is Nellie telling things to Lockwood. Every once in a while, I'm going to go to the present, but most of the story takes place in the past. So we're going to start with what's happening in Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw. Mr. Earnshaw and Mrs. Earnshaw have 2 children. We've got Hindley and we've got Catherine. At the start of the story, like, Catherine is like 5 or 6 years old. Hindley is a little bit older than her. So I have a young Margot Robbie here playing Catherine because Margot Robbie is cast as Catherine. But like in the story, she is a child. Like most of the story happens when she's like between 11 and 18. So I'm sorry. Like Margot Robbie is not old. 30, like she's in her 30s. That's not old. But you cannot reliably cast a woman in her mid-30s to play an 11 to 18-year-old. Like, I'm sorry. Where Jacob Elordi is not my Heathcliff. Margot Robbie is not my Catherine. Like, we need someone younger. Mr. Earnshaw has his 2 kids. They're both young. We got, like, she's probably about 5 or 6, and he's probably a few years older than her. And Mr. Earnshaw is going to go on a trip. And so he tells his kids, hey, I'm going to go on a trip. I'll be back in a few days. What do you want as a present? And so Hindley is like, I want a fiddle. And Catherine loves horses, and so she wants a new whip for her riding. Mr. Earnshaw leaves, and then a few days later, he comes back. And the 2 kids are like, hey, where are our presents? And Mr. Earnshaw is like, I broke the fiddle and I lost the whip, but I do have a surprise for you. And he shows up with a young boy who has dark skin, different hair, dark eyes, and he was this boy he found on the street. I guess it's the 1800s, and that's just like what you do is you find a street urchin and you bring him in. And so this boy is about the same age as Catherine, right? And so Mr. Earnshaw is like, I'm going to name him Heathcliff. He does not have more than one name. Everyone else's first and last names. Heathcliff is just Heathcliff. And we're going to treat him like my kid. Now, at first, everyone does not like this idea. Mrs. Earnshaw is not happy about her husband bringing in a new young boy to her house. She does not like him. She's judging him. She's kind of racially profiling him. She does not like him. Hindley is latching on to anything he can that sets Heathcliff apart. Hindley is mad that there's this new boy who's here, like usurping his role as a son, especially because as they get older, Mr. Earnshaw is like really likes Heathcliff. And so Hindley starts seeing Heathcliff as like pushing him out as like his favorite son. Catherine at first doesn't like Heathcliff. She actually spits on him, but she's not really mad about his race. She's not really mad that he's being treated like a son. She's mad because her dad lost the whip trying to get him. As Heathcliff kind of grows older and closer, these 2 are really fast friends, and Nellie is like seeing that these 2 are kind of inseparable. And so while all this is happening, at first Catherine didn't like Heathcliff, but now they're best friends. As we're here, we did not have Mrs. Earnshaw very long. Mrs. Earnshaw shortly afterwards dies. So we're going to take our Miss Earnshaw character, and she's going to go into our little graveyard because she has died. So Mommy Dearest has passed away, and we start to kind of see more of the dynamic here as Nellie is telling it. Nellie lives in the house. Joseph is a servant. They have plenty of other servants too, but these are just the 2 named ones. And Mr. Earnshaw is growing up with his kids, and as they're growing, he gets closer to Heathcliff, like I said, so Hindley starts hating Heathcliff more. And Nellie, she kind of is saying that like she never really liked Heathcliff. She's always gotten kind of a weird feeling about him, but I think that this is just kind of her trying to paint herself in a good light because she's telling the story to Lockwood. I don't think that actually she feels that way. That's just my opinion. But Nellie is seeing Hindley mistreat Heathcliff, and she's kind of describing how Heathcliff kind of just takes it and he's quiet. Where Hindley is loud, Heathcliff is quiet, and Catherine is a little menace. Catherine is manipulative. She's a wild child. She's a brat, and then she'll do what she wants. And then when she gets in trouble, she kind of turns on the waterworks, turns on the charm, and everybody's kind of wrapped around Catherine's finger. And so even Nellie is like kind of like just enamored with Catherine. They all do exactly what Catherine wants. Catherine has the run of the house, and then whenever she gets in trouble, she cries, and they all want to be friends with her again. So Catherine's a wild child. Heathcliff is best friends with Catherine. They get into all kinds of trouble. Mr. Earnshaw starts treating Heathcliff kind of more like his son than Hindley is. Hindley is watching this and he's festering. He's getting worse and worse. And it gets to the point where Mr. Earnshaw cannot handle Hindley anymore. Hindley is yelling at his father. Hindley is cursing Heathcliff. He's hitting Heathcliff. And Mr. Earnshaw is like, enough is enough. You are being sent away to school. You cannot live here anymore. So Hindley is sent away, and now it's just Mr. Earnshaw, Joseph, Nellie, Heathcliff, and Catherine living in this house. And they're getting wilder and wilder. Catherine is just kind of running amok. Heathcliff is getting into trouble with her on the moors. And Mr. Earnshaw is kind of being mistreated by his daughter. But then whenever he's not really strong enough to like discipline her. So Nellie's kind of watching this toxic situation unfold. And this toxic situation does not last for long though, because Mr. Earnshaw gets a cold. And one day he's sitting in his chair, and when Catherine and Heathcliff are there, Catherine goes to hug her father goodnight and hugs him, and he is dead. So Mr. Earnshaw, rest in peace, joins his wife, and Nellie remarks how this is traumatic, right? You're a young kid, and you are hugging your father, and he's dead. And so she kind of goes and wants to kind of comfort Catherine, and when she goes upstairs, she sees that Heathcliff is already hugging Catherine. He's embracing her. He's calming her down, and she's like, this is their friendship. Like, this is the moment. They've always been close, but when Heathcliff came and consoled Catherine, they're inseparable. They are essentially one person. Where Catherine goes, Heathcliff follows. And so now, again, this is the 1800s. Women cannot own property. Even if she could, she's like around 10 years old. Like, she cannot be in charge. We've got the servants. So Hindley comes back from school. He's now like a young man. He's still really young, but now he is back at Wuthering Heights. He is the master of the house, so to speak. And Hindley has brought his new wife, Frances, who they are newlyweds, home to Wuthering Heights. He is now in charge, and he says, hey, new rules. Heathcliff, you have been treated like you are a son. You are not an Earnshaw. You are going to be a servant. You are going to essentially be a stable hand. You are being kicked out of the house. You're going to live with Nellie and Joseph as servants, like kind of in the outhouse area for the Wuthering Heights. You're not in the main house. You are a servant. Like, we're stopping your education. Again, he's like 10 years old. He's like 11 years old. So you're not going to learn anymore. You're going to work. You're going to be a plow hand. Like, you're working with the horses. You're working the field. You're not a son. Get used to your place. And Hindley starts beating Heathcliff. And Frances is kind of watching this, and Catherine doesn't really like Frances because she's kind of ditzy. She's kind of stupid. And Frances is like nice enough, but she is terrified of death. And so Catherine thinks that her older like sister-in-law is silly. And Hindley is beating Heathcliff, and Catherine is still best friends with Heathcliff. And what Nellie is noticing is no matter how badly Hindley mistreats Heathcliff, he is still close with Catherine. Catherine makes it better. She is trying to help teach him what she's learning to keep his education. They're still playing on the moors. And so even though Hindley's doing his best to make Heathcliff's life miserable, it doesn't quite work all the way because Catherine is still his best friend, and she still kind of makes his time bearable. So we've talked a lot about what's happened at Wuthering Heights. Let's go ahead and check in on Thrushcross Grange. So the Grange is the only other house that's kind of on these moors. And the Grange is like wealthy. Like Wuthering Heights is not bad. They've got a bunch of servants. They like have land. Like it's not like they're not wealthy, but like the Grange, they got money. They have old money. And the Grange is being run by Mrs. and Mr. Linton, and they have 2 children that are about the same age as Catherine and Hindley were. So they've got Edgar, who is like a little bit older than Catherine, and then we've got Isabella, who is like basically Catherine's age. And so they live over here on the Grange. And so Catherine and Heathcliff are about 11 years old now. And they decide that they're going to spy on the hoity-toity rich kids who live at the Grange. So they it's about 4 miles. They make the walk, and they're watching through the window. And we've got Edgar and Isabella, who are these like prim and proper little fancy rich kids. They're playing with their puppy, and Catherine and Heathcliff are kind of making faces through the window. They're like teasing them. They're mocking them. And Edgar and Isabella see them, and they set the dog out on them to chase them off. And so the dog goes and runs after these 2, and the dog bites Catherine. And Catherine falls down and she's hurt. And Heathcliff refuses to leave Catherine behind, right? So all the servants from the Thrushcross come out. And the first thing that everyone sees is this boy, and he's dirty and he's yelling and he's been playing in the mud and he's cursing and he's refusing to leave Catherine, who's hurt. And so they're like kind of mistreating these 2 until they see that Catherine isn't a ruffian quite like Heathcliff. Yes, she's speaking like him, like she's cursing and she's kind of dirty, she's in the mud, but they realize that Catherine is the daughter over at Wuthering Heights. So they take Catherine in, and they refuse to let Heathcliff inside their house because he is other than. He's less than. He's a servant. He's dirty. He's got dark skin. They're not letting this man in their rich, fancy white house. So Catherine kind of comes in, and Heathcliff is refusing to leave her side. And it starts raining, and he's watching through the window as Catherine is being treated nicely. She's being set by the fire. They're taking care of her wounds. And Heathcliff realizes that Catherine already has all the Lintons wrapped around her finger. And he's watching as this family falls in love with his best friend, and he feels like he can't do anything. And so it's late, it's dark, he's been watching through the window, and finally he realizes that these people are not going to be mistreating his best friend. So he finally makes the walk back home, going back to Wuthering Heights. And Hindley, Nellie, and Joseph see that the 2 people are missing, right? Catherine's missing and Heathcliff is missing. Hindley doesn't really care. He basically is like, lock the doors. It's their own fault. Nellie, do not let them in. And Nellie stays up all night and disobeys and sees Heathcliff come. Heathcliff is wet. He's muddy. And Catherine is not with him. And so Heathcliff tells Nellie about what happened. The next day, Mr. and Mrs. Linton go to visit Hindley. And they talk about how wild Catherine and this Heathcliff are, but that they like Catherine. And so she's hurt, so they're going to nurse her back to health over at the Grange. She's going to be taken care of, and they're going to turn Catherine into a proper little lady. And Hindley tells them, yes, I agree. Thank you so much for taking my sister under your wing. And then once they leave, he goes and lays into Heathcliff. And he's like, the buck stops here. When Catherine returns, you are not her friend. You're not to speak to her. You're not to talk to her. Don't even look at her unless she speaks and looks at you. Like, you guys are not friends. And I am embarrassed about how you have let her behave and about how you behaved with the Lintons. You made me look bad at my neighbors and made it look like I don't have control of my estate. So it has been 5 weeks, and Catherine has been living with the Lintons. And Catherine, Edgar, and Isabella now are close. Again, the Lintons love Catherine. And so she's been away for 5 weeks. She comes back. It's almost Christmas time. And when Catherine is there, she kind of leaves the carriage, right? It's the scene of her returning, and she is now a prim and proper lady. Beforehand, she was this wild child. Now she's dressed in fancy dresses. She's behaving properly, and she's kind of giving everyone little kisses as she returns. Like, again, she's 11 years old. Like, it's like expected. And she's looking around and she's like, where is Heathcliff? And while she's been away, Heathcliff has stopped washing himself. He's been depressed. And so when she's asking for Heathcliff, Heathcliff shows up and she gives Heathcliff his little kiss. And then she's like, oh, Heathcliff, you're like dirty. Like, I can't, like, why are you so dirty? You're going to get your dirt all over my pretty little dress. And Heathcliff is pissed off because he's been hearing people talk about how like dirty he is and how bad he is, but his best friend has always been with him, and his best friend has like played in the mud with him. Like, she's been right there. And so now his best friend is like treating him the way that everyone else has treated him. And so he's mad. And so he's like, I'm going to be as dirty as I want to. And he runs off. Again, he's a child. They're kids. And so Catherine is back. She's kind of this prim and proper lady, but she does still have a bit of her wild tendencies. She's not fully cured. And so Mr. and Mrs. Linton come to Hindley and they're like, hey, let's have Christmas dinner together. We'll go to church together. We'll come back and we'll have Christmas dinner here. My one condition is I do not want my good, proper children to be around this ruffian. So when we are here, keep Heathcliff on a leash, lock him up. Like, I don't want my good children around his influence. So Hindley is like, yep, Heathcliff will not come to dinner with us. And so they go to church, and Nellie sees how sad Heathcliff is, and she decides to give him a little bit of pep talk. And she's like, hey, I know that you're a little bit younger than Edgar, but like you're taller than him, you're stronger than him. Here's what I'll do. I will clean you up. I have to clean the house. I have to cook the dinner, but I'm going to spend some extra time to make you look nice. So that way when everyone comes home, they will see how good you are. They will see how clean you are, how put together you are. And Catherine will see how amazing you are with next to Edgar and how much better you are than Edgar. And Heathcliff is basically like, hey, it doesn't matter how clean I get. It doesn't matter how nice I dress. Edgar will always be rich. Edgar will always be white. And I hate my dark skin, and I hate my hair, and I hate my eyes. I wish I was as rich and as white as Edgar is. And Nellie is like, hey, like you are so much better than him. And Nellie feels bad about this. And after the talk, Heathcliff is still kind of lamenting about the way he looks, about the way he acts, but he is a little bit better, and he's decided that he is going to kind of clean up a little bit, take Nellie's advice. And so Heathcliff is down in the kitchen when Hindley and the others start coming home. And so Hindley is in the kitchen and Heathcliff is there, and Hindley sees that Heathcliff has a little pep in his step. And he's like, that's not going to fly. So Hindley starts making fun of Heathcliff. He starts saying he's going to give him a knuckle sandwich. He's threatening him again, all that stuff. He's terrible to Heathcliff. Heathcliff is used to it though. But then Edgar comes in, and Edgar starts making fun of Heathcliff's hair. And again, it's bringing up all these insecurities that he just talked about with Nellie. And so Heathcliff, though he's used to this from Hindley, he's not used to this from Edgar. So he grabs the nearest thing, and it's this like applesauce, this hot applesauce in this like metal tin, right? And he throws it at Edgar, and it hits Edgar. And one thing to remember about Edgar is a little baby back bitch. And so when he gets hit with this metal tin with this food, he starts crying, and that gets everyone in the room, and Catherine starts laying in on everyone there. Catherine's yelling at Heathcliff, being like, how dare you embarrass me in front of my friends? Like, you are an embarrassment. She yells at Hindley for mistreating Heathcliff, and then she yells at Edgar for being a little baby. She's like, dude, why are you crying? Like, he just hit you with food. Like, you are fine. So everyone gets scolded by Catherine, and Hindley is like, lock Heathcliff up. So Nellie has to lock Heathcliff in a bedroom, and they are starting to do Christmas dinner, and then there's dancing. And so Nellie sees that Catherine starts like moseying more and more outside, and Catherine scales the wall outside the house and jumps in through the skylight into Heathcliff's room. And so Nellie comes in, and Catherine and Heathcliff are kind of embracing. Again, they're children. They're young. And so Nellie is like, hey, Kathy, you gotta go before somebody sees that you're missing. Your brother's not gonna be happy you're here. And she decides that she's gonna sneak Heathcliff down to get some food. And when she sneaks Heathcliff into the kitchen to get some dinner because he's been locked up, Heathcliff turns to Nellie, and he starts talking all about how the only thing that keeps him from feeling pain is thinking about his revenge on Hindley. And he doesn't know where, he doesn't know how, but one day he's going to make Hindley pay for everything that he's done to him. And Nellie like gets chills hearing this young boy. He's like 11, he's like 12 years old, and he's talking about how like the only thing that keeps him happy is thinking about how terrible he's going to make Hindley's life and how he's going to pay him back one day. And so she's always seen him as somebody who like is kind of quiet and bears the torture, like bears the mistreatment, but like she's like, I am scared of Heathcliff and what he will one day do in this revenge plot. So we fast forward a little bit, and it's been a couple years. And Frances gives birth to a little baby boy named Hareton. Again, we've got the Earnshaws, Hindley and Frances Earnshaw, and we've got Hareton Earnshaw. So we know that this baby grows up to be that scruffy boy who was living in Wuthering Heights, that scruffy, 20-year-old. So we're kind of like, interesting, how did we get here? Frances gives birth, and Frances is really, really sick. Again, remember, this is back then, in like the mortality rate for both infants and new mothers is extremely high. And so Frances, she gives birth and she's not doing well. And all the servants are kind of warning Nellie, like, hey, Nellie, Frances is super gonna die, and then you are gonna be stuck with the baby. So Nellie goes to Hindley and she's like, how's Frances doing? And Hindley is denying that Frances will die. He's like, my wife will be fine. She's gonna get through this. There's no way she's gonna die. Well, Frances dies. So Frances gets to join our graveyard. And just like all the servants said, Nellie gets stuck with the baby. Hindley, he turns to alcoholism. He is so depressed about the loss of his wife. He wants nothing to do with his son. And so he gives the baby to Nellie. He's like, take care of this. I don't even want to see this. Like, this boy killed my wife. Like, I do not love this child. You need to take care of it. And he turns to alcoholism. He's getting worse and worse. The beatings for Heathcliff that were already bad are now 10 times worse. And he starts kind of turning on all of the other servants as well. And so all the servants start quitting until it's essentially just Joseph and Nellie now left. So this house is getting really, really toxic. And because of how toxic this house is getting, Catherine starts spending less and less time at the Heights and spending more and more time at the Grange with the Lintons, right? And so Hindley's beating Heathcliff, and Heathcliff wants to hang out with Catherine because that's how it's always been. But now Catherine is seeing how toxic it is, and she's hanging out with the Lintons. And when she's over at the Lintons, she's very prim and proper. She's behaving like a lady. And then when she's at home, she's wild and free, just like how she's always been. And so Heathcliff is kind of angry at Catherine for being a little two-faced, for being a little chameleon. So one day they're in a parlor, and we've got Catherine, Heathcliff, and Nellie and the baby. Hindley is out. Hindley is out doing what he's doing. He's drinking, he's gambling, he's away. And so Heathcliff tells Catherine, hey, let's go out on the moors like you love and play. And she says, no, I've got Edgar and Isabella coming over. Actually, you should go away because my new friends are coming over and I don't want to hang out with you. And Heathcliff is mad. He's like, hey, like, we are like 16 years old now. And you are like, ever since you went over there the first time, you have come back and you're different, and you're one way with your friends and then you're another way when you're here. I want my Catherine back. I want my friend who would run around barefoot on the moors with me and play fairy stories and like be this wild ruffian. I want her back. And so Heathcliff gets mad and he runs out. And right after he leaves, Edgar comes in and Isabella is nowhere to be seen. So we've got Nellie, Catherine, the baby, and Edgar in the house. And Nellie is like, absolutely not. This is, late 1700s. You absolutely cannot have a 16-year-old girl and a young boy in the room together alone. No way. And so Hindley, when he was in the house, he's also told Nellie, anytime Edgar's over, you need to be there because my sister needs a chaperone. So Nellie is refusing to leave the room, and Catherine is mad that Nellie won't leave her alone with the cute rich boy who's from across the street. And so Catherine starts yelling at Nellie to leave. Nellie refuses to leave. So Catherine starts hitting Nellie. She starts pinching her. She's like hitting her on the face. Nellie is still not leaving, but it's getting escalated. And Edgar has never seen Catherine act this way before. And when Catherine starts seeing that Nellie isn't going to leave just from hurting Nellie, she turns on the little baby who started crying because he sees Nellie getting hurt. And she starts shaking the baby. And this is where Nellie flips her lid. She scoops the baby up. She's like, screw this. Catherine, absolutely not. And she goes to leave the room to rush the baby to safety. She's like, I don't give a damn about propriety. This girl is going to hurt this infant. And so Nellie leaves with crying Harriton. And she can kind of see that Edgar is planning to leave too. And Catherine is like, Edgar Linton, you stay right here. And Edgar is floored. He has never seen Catherine behave like this. He has only ever seen her be prim and proper ever since she got bit. And so he does not like the way that she's behaving, and he tells her so. And Catherine, again, she's gotten her way every single time as soon as she starts crying. So she throws herself to the floor and she's like, oh, baby, please don't leave me. Let's stay friends. And Nellie's not in the room, but Nellie can still kind of see what's happening. And Nellie is like, oh shit, this boy, she's got her claws into him. Like, this is the moment. He is in love with her because he refuses to leave the room when she cries, and he helps her up, and they sit and they talk. And Nellie can't tell what they're talking about, but Nellie's like, that is the moment. His fate is sealed. She has her claws into him the way that she's had her claws into everyone else, and nothing good can happen. Now, Hindley comes back, and Hindley is blackout drunk. And so Edgar sees that as his cue to leave. So Edgar leaves, and when Hindley comes in the room, Hindley has a knife, and he puts the knife in Nellie's mouth. And he's like threatening Nellie, and Nellie's like, do it. She's like, you've made everyone else quit. She's still holding the baby. She's like, do it. Like, if you're going to hurt me, hurt me. There's a reason everyone is leaving, and you are the problem. And Hindley does not like this. And so then he starts to see the baby, and he's like asking the baby to give him a hug, give him a kiss. The baby does not like Hindley. The baby likes Nellie. And so this gets Hindley even madder. He's drunk, so he grabs the baby out of Nellie's arms, and he's walking out of the room, and he ends up tripping at the top of the stairs, and he drops the baby down the stairs. Now, Heathcliff has just returned home from his little storm off session. And Heathcliff isn't even thinking. He sees the falling baby, and just like reaction, he grabs the baby and saves it. And Nellie sees Heathcliff's face when he realizes that he saved the baby. And she watches as his face changes because he realizes that he just ruined the best opportunity he had to ruin Hindley's life. Remember, that's his goal. He doesn't know how he's going to do it, but he wants to ruin Hindley's life. And this would have been the perfect opportunity because his nemesis almost killed his only heir because he was so drunk. And Nellie notices that, like, if she wasn't there, Heathcliff would have dashed the baby's brains out and pretended that Hindley was the one who killed him. But he is mad that he did it. And Nellie sees this. And so Nellie scoops the baby out of his arms immediately. And she's like, absolutely not. And then Hindley comes in, starts berating Nellie, and is like, how could you let this happen? And Nellie's like, are you flippin' kidding me? I don't get paid enough for this. And so she takes the baby and she takes him into the kitchen, and she's going to like take care of him. The baby's crying. Hindley's in a rage, and Heathcliff storms off, apparently. Nellie says she doesn't know where he is. Something happens later, and it's kind of like, did she not know where he was, or did she really? Like, again, she's telling the story, so we don't know how truthful everything is, but she thinks that everyone has left. So she's in the kitchen taking care of the baby, and who shows up but Catherine? And Catherine says, hey, Nellie, girl, bestie, Edgar proposed to me today, but before I tell you what I said, I need you to tell me what you think I should have said. Like, what is the right answer? And Nellie, who's so sick of this bullshit by now, is like, girl, I do not care what you said. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're looking to me for the right answer. What did you pick? The right answer is whatever you picked. And like, why did you pick it? And so Catherine's like, well, I said yes. And the reason that I said yes is because he is rich and he is pretty. He loves me. And Nellie's like, those are shallow reasons. She's like, he's not going to be pretty forever. And honestly, I don't even think you care that he loved you because he has money. You're just marrying him for the money. You're only marrying him for shallow reasons. Like, girl, get your head out of your ass. Like, why are you doing this? And Catherine is like, how dare you, first off? This is the only decision that I could ever make, but I'm not happy with this decision. And Nellie is kind of like, why? Why aren't you happy with this decision? And Catherine says, well, I had this dream. And I have this dream that I was being offered heaven. And heaven in this case is Edgar. But I could never be happy because what I really want is Heathcliff. And it would debase me to be with Heathcliff. My brother has made sure that I could never be with the man that I love because he's treated him like a servant. And I cannot marry a servant. We would be beggars. We'd be destitute. I have to marry someone of my station. And the only person of my station is Edgar. But I don't want Edgar. I want Heathcliff. But it would ruin me to be with Heathcliff. I would have to debase myself. And Nellie sees out of the corner of her eye some movement at that moment. So we're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it later. Catherine continues. And Catherine is like, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to marry Edgar, and using my husband's money, I am going to raise Heathcliff to the standard of living that he should be in. I'm going to use this money, and I'm going to make sure that the man I love is taken care of. And Nellie's like, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Your husband is not going to let that happen. And Catherine's like, I don't really care. My husband is going to have to deal with it because nothing in the world is going to separate us. And Nellie's like, girl, you're an idiot. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard. And like, that's not going to happen. Now, remember how I said put a pin in the movement? In the corner of her eye, Nellie saw Heathcliff standing in the doorway. And all that Heathcliff heard was Kathy saying how it would debase her to marry him. She does not hear Kathy essentially professing her love for him. All he hears is that Catherine will never, ever marry Heathcliff because it would ruin her to be with him. And then he storms off. And not only does he storm off into like the rain, all drama, he storms off and he runs away. Like, nobody can find Heathcliff. And so now when the conversation's over, Catherine's looking for Heathcliff and can't find him. And it's raining and it's storming and she's yelling herself hoarse. She is ordering Joseph to go look for him. And like, when Joseph comes back empty-handed, she's like, how dare you not look for him hard enough? You don't really care about him. She stays out all night in the rain. And she is like making herself sick over how much she can't find Heathcliff. And finally it's the next day and she comes in and Hindley's like, nursing his hangover, and he doesn't care that Heathcliff's gone. He's actually kind of happy about it, but he sees his sister and he's like, girl, get your ish together. This is not how we behave. And so now that the Lintons, Edgar has told dear old mom and dad about his new future bride, the Lintons hear that Catherine is sick because she's made herself sick in the rain. And so they say, hey, our future daughter-in-law, she should come back to the Grange and heal up. And so she does. She heals, she gets better, but Mr. and Mrs. Linton catch what she had, and where she gets better, the Lintons die. So they get to join our dead people over here. We have a growing list of people who are getting sick and dying from like a simple cold. So now it's a few years later. Nellie has moved into the Grange with Edgar and Isabella. These two are now 18 years old, and now that they're 18, they get married. So Catherine is living with Edgar and Isabella and Nellie at the Grange. We pause our story because remember, this is the story Nellie is telling Lockwood. Lockwood has been sick for like weeks. And so he's been hearing the story piece by piece as Nellie is getting him better. And he basically interrupts the story and he's like, wait. How did Heathcliff get all this money? And Nellie's like, nobody really knows. When he left, when they were young, like, they're around 15, 16, he left and we don't know what happened to him. And all that we know is about 6 months after Catherine and Edgar get married, Heathcliff returns. And so Nellie jumps back into the story. Nellie is living with Catherine, Edgar, and Isabella in the Grange. She hears rumors, because all the servants talk, that Heathcliff has returned. Heathcliff now suddenly is super wealthy and he's living with Hindley. And it's a little interesting. It's a little weird. It's like, why is this rich Heathcliff, why has he returned to the Wuthering Heights? And why is he living with Hindley? Is there like some gambling debts happening? It's all a little fishy. But Hareton is living with Hindley, Hareton's now like 3 or 4. It's been a few years. Joseph is there, but it's just kind of the 4 of them living in Wuthering Heights. It's this weird situation. And Heathcliff makes it very clear that he wants to see Catherine. And Nellie, again, Nellie is a little gossip. She lives for the drama. So Nellie makes sure that Heathcliff is going to come visit Catherine and the in-laws over here at the Grange. And so when Heathcliff comes over, Catherine is not subtle, right? She has always liked Heathcliff. Heathcliff has always been taller and like broader and stronger than Edgar. But the only thing that Edgar had going for him was he had money. Well, now Heathcliff looks like he could be rich, maybe even richer than Edgar. And he's even taller and he's even stronger. Like, they're 18 now. You know what I mean? And so Catherine is goo eyes over Heathcliff now that he's returned with all this money. And she is not subtle about it. And Heathcliff also starts flirting with Isabella, right? He comes to visit and Isabella also sees this man who he's tall, he's rich, he's showing her attention. And so Isabella is starting to fall for Heathcliff. And so now we've got kind of this cattiness going on where Catherine is telling Isabella, you got to stay away from him because this man needs a woman with fire. He's going to walk all over you. Isabella, you are too much of a wallflower for this man. You're too quiet. You're too meek. This man will chew you up and spit you out. You are not right for him. And Isabella is like, girl, you are just jealous. Everyone knows that you got the hots for this guy, but you're already married. So, like, I cannot believe that you're being so jealous over this man. Like, I'm not listening to what you're saying because, like, it's very clear that you just want him for yourself. And you're mad that you can't have him, so you want to make sure that nobody can have him. So, it's a little bit later, and one day Nellie is in the kitchen, and she sees Heathcliff and Isabella, and they're embracing. Oh my goodness, scandal. Remember, this is like 1700s, late 1700s. A man and a woman who are 18 years old should not be hugging if they are unmarried in a kitchen, especially without anyone else. So Nellie goes to Heathcliff, and she's like, so are you going to marry her? And Heathcliff is basically telling Nellie, no. I don't really care. I don't even like her, but I am here for revenge. I am mad at Edgar, that Edgar has Catherine. I'm in love with Catherine. I do not give a rat's ass about Isabella, but I'm not going to let this opportunity pass me by. I will do whatever it takes to make Edgar mad. And Nellie's like, this is absolutely crazy. I'm going to tattle. So Nellie goes and tells Edgar, and Edgar gets so pissed off that Heathcliff is being inappropriate with his little sister in a kitchen without a chaperone. Now, remember, Edgar, baby back bitch. He knows that he cannot take Heathcliff in a fight. Heathcliff is bigger, Heathcliff is stronger, so he hires 3 of his servants to come and fight Heathcliff with him, so it'll be 4-on-1. Catherine gets wind of this, and Catherine is like, oh, hell no, buddy. We are not having a bunch of, people fighting with you. And she locks the 3 of them in a room. And Catherine is screaming at Edgar. And she's like, if you love me, you will hit him. Like, if you've ever cared about me, hit this man. So Edgar gets 1 punch in and then he runs off, right? He knows he can't handle a fight. Heathcliff is like, this is too much drama, and he starts to leave. And Catherine makes herself ill over all this. She locks herself in a room. She refuses to eat. And it's like she goes into this rage. She's like biting pillows and like tearing feathers everywhere. She has gone crazy. And Nellie's seeing this and is like, this is ridiculous. And Edgar is kind of like turning a blind eye. It said that he's in his books. He's not really paying attention to how sick his wife is making herself. Nellie sees how sick Catherine's making herself. And if Edgar's not going to do anything, she will. So she calls the doctor. And the doctor looks her over and says, hey, I don't know what the sickness is. It's kind of like nobody really knows what's going on. But what the doctor says is the only way she's going to get better is if she is in complete peace and tranquility. Nothing can disrupt her. Oh, by the way, Catherine is pregnant. So for the health of the mother and the health of the baby, she needs to be kept completely calm. Nothing can disturb her over the months that she gets better. Well, of course, right after we hear this, we find out that Isabella has run off and gotten married to Heathcliff. And Edgar is like, this girl is not my sister. If she picked my enemy, she's no longer my sister. I do not care about her. She is disowned. So Isabella has moved in with Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, and she has left that. So we're trying to keep her calm and tranquil when all this is happening. Girl, please. It is a few months later, and Nellie has noticed that Edgar has gotten some letters from Isabella, and he is not opening them. Again, he doesn't care about Isabella. If Isabella made her bed, Isabella needs to lie in it. So then Isabella starts writing Nellie, and she is telling Nellie about how awful it is at Wuthering Heights, and we get a little picture of what's going on at the house across the hills. So Isabella has moved in, and Hindley, he's always been a drunk and he's always been gambling, and he's just gotten worse, and he's always been violent, and it's just terrible. He is completely neglectful of his baby Hareton, so nobody but Heathcliff is raising Hareton, and Heathcliff is sabotaging Hareton by making sure that Hareton isn't educated, just like he wasn't. He teaches Hareton to curse, and so Hareton is just this like devil child who is just screaming and isn't learning and doesn't know how to read, and he just curses all the time, and he spits on his dad, and he's just this awful, awful, awful kid. And Isabella is watching all this. Joseph isn't doing anything. Joseph is just sermonizing with his weird accent all the time. Hindley is drunk every day. And Heathcliff starts beating Isabella. He's abusing her. She writes to Nellie, and she's like, Nellie, please get me out of this situation. I need to get out. This is not safe. Don't tell anybody how bad it is, right? Like, keep it under wraps because I'm embarrassed, but know it's bad. And convince my brother without telling him how bad it is. Convince my brother to let me back in because I am not going to make it over here. So Nellie decides that she's going to go over to Wuthering Heights for a little wellness check after getting this letter, right? So she goes over there and she's looking for Isabella, but she runs into Heathcliff and he's like asking about Catherine. Nellie is like, I can't tell you can't see Catherine. I can't talk to you about her. She needs tranquility. It's been a few months, but she still hasn't quite recovered. Nothing is really fixing her. We don't really know what's wrong with her, but she needs absolute peace. And so you cannot come in and disrupt this peace. She's pregnant. She's going to have a kid. We need to keep her calm. And so Heathcliff's like, fine, give her this letter. You need to read this letter to her. And so Nellie finally gives in. She takes the letter back to the Grange, and she has to wait until Edgar isn't home because she knows that this letter is not going to be good. So she can't have him here for the fallout. So 4 days later, Edgar is gone, and Nellie comes in to read Catherine this letter. And Catherine starts getting so ill while she's reading her the letter. Catherine starts freaking out. And Nellie is like, uh-oh, this isn't good. But, of course, who shows up at the entrance of Catherine's room but Heathcliff? Heathcliff knows that Edgar is out. Heathcliff hasn't heard anything from Nellie ever since he gave her the letter, so he's come to check on his lady love himself. And when Catherine and Heathcliff are reunited here, they are kissing, they are screaming at each other, and Catherine is like, you, Heathcliff and Edgar, you guys have killed me. Look at what you did, right? It's all drama, drama, drama. And Heathcliff is like, how dare you say that I killed you while you're on your deathbed? Are you evil? Because you know that these may be the last thing that you ever said to me. And how dare you say that I killed you as the last thing that you have ever said to me? And so Catherine's like, oh no, please forgive me. And Heathcliff pulls out some banger lines and he's like, I forgive you for all of this, right? I forgive you for picking the rich white boy and not giving me enough time to get my act together and get enough money so that way we could live together. I forgive you for that. What I cannot forgive you for is you are in this state because of you. You are making yourself sick, and I will not forgive you for killing yourself because I love you, and how dare I love your murderer? So I will not forgive you. And Nellie is watching this, and she's like, guys, Edgar will be home any minute. Heathcliff, you gotta go. And Catherine's like, no, please, like, he can't leave me. He'll never see me again. He needs to stay here. And so it starts getting more and more heated, and Edgar starts coming in the door. And so Nellie is freaking out. Catherine is in Heathcliff's arms, and then right as Edgar is coming into the room, Catherine passes out. She has gone limp in Heathcliff's arms. And Heathcliff essentially, like, Edgar opens his mouth to get mad, right? And Heathcliff throws a limp Catherine into Edgar's arms and is like, dude, make sure your girl is all right first before you get mad at me. And Heathcliff kind of steals out, right? He's kind of like waiting outside of the house to find out about Catherine. And Catherine gives birth to a baby girl that she names Catherine, and then Catherine dies. So Catherine gets to join our dead people on the wall. So Catherine has given birth and Catherine has died, and Heathcliff is waiting outside. And so Catherine's body is still in the bed. Edgar is kind of holding vigil for her, and Nellie goes outside to talk to Heathcliff because she knows that he's still there. And as soon as she gets there, Heathcliff's like, she died, didn't she? I felt her. She's gone. And Nellie's like, yeah, she died. But don't worry, it was peaceful. And Heathcliff is pissed off. He's mad, right? He's sad. He's all these things. But he is really angry that Nellie has the audacity to tell him that Catherine passed away peacefully. And so he bangs his head on the side of a tree when he says this, right? So it's like super dramatic, but this is what he says. And I'm going to literally just kind of do like a little voiceover here so that way like we can zoom in on his face while I say this, because like this is absolutely wild. The way that this quote had me gnawing at my enclosure when I was a little kid, like I swear this was insane. So this is what he says. He goes, Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you? Haunt me then. The murdered do haunt their murderers. I believe, I know that ghosts have wandered the earth. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. So he is yelling, crying, saying these things. He's bashing his head against a tree. And 16-year-old Julia was like, yep, this is love. That's love. And thank God I couldn't get a tattoo when I was 16, or else that entire quote would just be on my back and then I'd be regretting it now. But so that is Heathcliff. That is his declaration. And Heathcliff, Nellie sneaks him into the vigil when she knows that Edgar has gone to bed. And Heathcliff looks down at the body of this woman he loves, and he sees this necklace that she has. She's a locket, and it's got a piece of her hair, and it's got a piece of Edgar's hair. And he opens it up, takes Edgar's little blonde hair out there, and throws it on the floor. And then he yanks out some hair from his head, and he puts it in the locket, and he kind of twists it around with Kathy's hair. And then he closes the locket, so that way when she's buried, she'll be buried with his hair and not Edgar's. And then he storms off. And Nellie goes and she picks up Edgar's hair off the floor and twists it with them. So it's all three of their hairs. It puts it in the locket. So that way Catherine will have a piece of both men that she loves forever in the grave. Again, messy, 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 messy. We love Nellie, but she is stirring the pot. Like, she is part of the problem. Nobody here is likable. So we have the funeral, and the funeral is a little bit of a scandal because Edgar doesn't bury Kathy within the Linton family plot, right? There's a Linton family grave, and he does not bury her there. He buries her kind of in the corner under this tree, looking out over the moors, because he knows how much his wife loved the moors. And so he just wants her to be resting where she has a beautiful view of this. And Hindley does not show up to the funeral. So it's a little strange, right? We've got Isabella isn't invited because Edgar is like, she's no longer my sister. So you got like this weird, like, people who should be there just aren't there for the funeral. Cut to, and it's a little bit later, and Nellie is kind of cooking, washing up. Nobody is home. And suddenly Isabella bursts in and she takes off her wedding ring and she throws it into the fire. And Nellie's like, girl, what is going on? And Isabella says, I cannot handle it. Let me tell you about the past 24 hours at Wuthering Heights. Like, this is, I'm leaving. I cannot stay here any longer. And so we hear that yesterday, which was the day of the funeral, Hindley is so just sad about his sister's death that he is drinking himself even worse than usual. And he's always been bad, but at this time, he tells Isabella, and he's like, I'm going to murder Heathcliff. And he tells her his whole plot. And so Isabella is like, no. So she tells Heathcliff. Again, she doesn't really like Heathcliff, but she also doesn't like Hindley. And so the enemy of my enemy, I guess, is my friend. So she tells Heathcliff, she's like, hey, he's going to murder you. So she tells the whole thing. And then Heathcliff foils it. They get into a fight, and then Hindley loses, and Hindley is like knocked out. When Hindley comes to, he gets mad at Isabella because Isabella ruined his chance, and so he's attacking Isabella now. And Isabella's like, this is ridiculous. I have been beaten by Heathcliff. Now I'm being beaten by Hindley. We've got this wild child baby boy who's like cursing at everyone. I cannot handle this. So she runs away. She is telling Nellie so that way Nellie can tell Edgar like what happened. And she's like, I am pregnant, so I am not having a baby in this house. I am not living here anymore. I am running off with my baby boy. And so they move to London. And so now Isabella has run off. So Isabella is living in London, and we know that she's pregnant. It is 12 years later. So we know that all this happened. We got Kathy, who she's about 12, and there's a baby in London who we don't really know yet, and he's also going to be about 12. And 12 years later, Nellie is like, this is the best 12 years of my life. And she talks about how amazing little Kathy has grown into. She is beautiful. She's smart. She's funny. Nellie like sings Kathy's praises. She loves this baby girl, but she does have a little bit of the wildness that was there with her mother, right? She is still her mother's daughter. And just like her mother, Kathy has her dad wrapped around her little finger. And her dad is seeing Kathy, and he knows that he's like, they're at the Grange. He knows that the Wuthering Heights is nearby. So Kathy's one rule is she is never allowed anywhere near the Heights. So she is this smart, beautiful, kind of angelic young blonde creature, but she is not allowed to leave the house really, and she's really sheltered, right? She doesn't get out much. She plays on the moors, but like she is a very much like her dad is keeping an eye on her, and so she's very naive, and she knows she can't go over to the Heights, which is the only other house that's nearby. 6 months after Kathy died, Hindley, he was an alcoholic, and Hindley also dies. And so that would mean that Hareton should own Wuthering Heights. Yes? Wrong. We find out that because he had so many debts, he owed Heathcliff money. So now Heathcliff owns Wuthering Heights, and he knows that Hareton will not see a cent, which is another reason why Daddy Dearest here does not want Kathy over at Wuthering Heights, because it's owned by Heathcliff. And so now it's 12 years later, and we don't really know what's happening over here. We never really see what's going on because little Kathy is in her little bubble. Now, why did we skip ahead 12 years? Well, Isabella wrote a letter to her brother saying, I had a baby. His name is Linton, and Linton is a little bit sickly, but it's nothing I can't handle. However, I am sick and I am going to die any day now. And if you have ever loved me ever, you will come rescue my son so that way his dad does not take him. So Edgar decides that he's going to leave. He's going to go to London. It's going to be a little bit of time, but he needs to go fetch his the daughter's cousin, so that way when the mom dies, that the boy is not taken by his dad, but that he'll live with Edgar. So he goes to London, and while he is heading there, Isabella dies. We're heading over. Kathy is about 12 or 13 now, and her dad is away, and so all she wants to do is play on the moors. And Nellie is kind of like, okay, fine, we can play out here, but like we got to make sure we're careful because, I know that your dad has kept you like very sheltered, and so we can't go too far when we're playing. While they are out and playing, Kathy ends up getting close to Wuthering Heights. And who does she meet out here on the moors outside this house? But there is this boy who is about her age, and this boy is really uncouth. He's like cursing, he's like shouting, and Kathy has never had anyone speak to her like this ever, right? She's been sheltered. Nellie is obsessed with this little girl, and so she's never had anyone treat her badly. And so she's like, what is going on here? And they start talking, and Nellie catches up with them and sees this going down. And Nellie is like, hey, Kathy, be nice to him. That's your cousin. And Kathy is like, no, it's not. My cousin's in London and my dad is going to go get him. And Nellie's like, girl, you're so stupid. You can have more than one cousin. So when she finds out that this is her cousin, they start to become friends, right? Just for a little bit. Like they're hanging out and they're talking more and more. And Nellie is like, cool, I'm watching this interaction, but we have to go home. And as they go home, she's like, hey, do not tell your dad that you were over here. But she's thinking about Harriton on the way back. And she's like, hey, looking at him, yes, he's uneducated and yes, he curses, but he is such a better boy, like kinder, sweeter. Like he is underneath it all, this rough exterior. He's a good kid and he is so much better than his dad ever was. And no matter how hard Heathcliff is trying to do to like ruin him, underneath it all, he's a really good kid. And so she's thinking about how good this kid is and how sad she is for him that he's being so sabotaged, because if he happened to have a proper education, he would go so far in life. And so she's kind of feeling bad about his fate. We have Edgar, who has come home now, and Edgar has brought Linton with them. And Linton is described as like sickly and things like that. And if we are here, I am sorry. This is a Timothée Chalamet hater account. Sorry, not sorry. So we have Timothée Chalamet playing our sickly little Linton. And when Kathy sees her new cousin, she's like disappointed. She's like, hey, who is this sickly little boy? What is going on here? And that evening, Joseph starts knocking on the door to the Grange. And Joseph is like, hey, I'm here because Heathcliff wants his son. We know you have him. I am not leaving until his son comes home with me because you guys don't have any ownership of him. This is my master's kid. And Edgar realizes that he doesn't have a leg to stand on because technically this is Heathcliff's son and there's nothing that he can really do. Yes, his mother wished that he would live here in the Grange, but like there's nothing that can happen here. So what happens is Nellie ends up telling Joseph like, hey, buy us one evening, right? He's really sick. He's really tired. Let him spend the night, and then tomorrow morning, I'll make sure he comes. So Joseph is like, you better. So the next day, she brings Linton over to Wuthering Heights, and Linton is really confused. He just lost his mom. He's never heard of his dad. And so he is like really kind of like shocked and is like, what is happening? Why am I going here? Nellie is at the doorstep here, and Heathcliff shows up, and Heathcliff is yelling at Linton. He's already treating him terribly. He's like, you are my property. You belong to me, all this stuff, and everything that you own, like this is mine. Like I own you, all that stuff. And Nellie is like really feeling bad, but there's nothing that she can do. And Linton is just crying, crying, crying. He's a sick little boy. He's like 12 years old, 13 years old. He doesn't know what's going on. And so she feels really bad knowing like how Harriton turned out, like how Harriton was treated. She already knows this poor little boy, and his mom's dying wish was that he would be treated okay. But she already knows that like this can't be good. But there's nothing she can do. And so she goes back to the Grange, to her life here with Kathy and all them. All that she can really do, all that Nellie can really do is anytime she's at the market, she meets up with the other housekeepers, right? There's this girl named Zilla who's working over here at Wuthering Heights. And she kind of, anytime she is there, she goes and she asks Zilla, like, hey, how are the boys doing? And she hears that, like, every time she gets word back, she hears her worst fears are there. Like, Heathcliff is absolutely terrible to these two boys. Linton is just sick all the time. Heathcliff beats him. Heathcliff beats Harriton. Harriton's not learning anything. And it's just this like toxic thing happening here. It's a few years later, and little Miss Kathy is 16 years old. And Kathy, again, Nellie is just obsessed with her. She's so pretty and she's so wonderful. And so for her 16th birthday, she wants to go and she wants to explore the moors. There's this little place, this like craggly rock, and she believes that fairies live there. And so every time she's ever asked to go out to this little fairy rock, her dad has said, no, you have to wait till you're older. But now she's 16. And so Nellie's like, I'll keep an eye on her and we'll go explore this little fairy rock. So she's 16 years old and she's kind of out here. It should happen. But when she is over here by the little rocks, she runs into two people. She runs into Harriton and Heathcliff. And now it's been 3 years. She's only seen him once. And so Kathy doesn't recognize Harriton, and she's never seen Heathcliff before ever. And so Nellie is kind of there, and Nellie's like, girl, we gotta go. And Kathy is talking with these two, and she's like, oh, hey, like, can I play with your son? And Heathcliff is like, that's not my son, but if you come to my house with me, I can introduce you to my son, and I think that you guys would really, really get along. And Kathy is like, yeah, absolutely, let's go. And Nellie is a little nervous. She's like, hey, like, you should not be seeing with them. Like, we should not be doing this. But Heathcliff kind of turns on the charm, and he convinces Kathy to come to Wuthering Heights with Harriton and Heathcliff, and Nellie's there. So that way Heathcliff can introduce Kathy to his son. And so while he's walking with Nellie, he like turns to Nellie and he tells her like this is his plan, and like Kathy is going to fall in love with Linton, get married to Linton, and then when he marries her, like he will have both the Grange and Wuthering Heights, and that like this will be his final revenge. And so Nellie's like already like, guard is up, like we should not be doing this, we need to get out of here as soon as possible. But Kathy is like, no, I want to play, like I want to see this like Wuthering Heights, I want to meet Heathcliff's little boy. And so like Kathy, again, Nellie thinks Kathy like hung the stars, so Nellie will do whatever it takes that makes Kathy happy. So she's begrudgingly going along to Wuthering Heights. While they are there, Heathcliff goes and introduces Linton to Kathy. And again, they don't remember each other. They met each other for one night 3 years ago. Like it was a really traumatic time for Linton. Kathy has kind of put it out of her mind. And so these two, they don't know each other, but they hit it off. And it's only been a little bit, but Nellie sees them getting on like a house on fire. And she's like, okay, we've been here long enough. We need to get home. And Kathy is like, oh, don't worry, Linton. We'll hang out again soon. Wink, wink. And Nellie is like, okay, come on, girlie, let's go. So she goes back to the Grange, and Kathy tells Edgar immediately all about this Linton boy that she's obsessed with at Wuthering Heights. And Nellie's like, ooh, why'd you tell your dad about this? And the dad rightly is a little bit mad at Nellie, but he's mostly just pissed that Kathy was where she wasn't supposed to be. And so Edgar is basically telling Kathy, like, you will not ever see that boy again. You cannot hang out with him. I never want to hear you going over there again. Put him out of your mind. Absolutely not. And Kathy, she's 16 years old, right? She doesn't really like this. She's a little sad. And of course, if her dad says you are never, ever, ever allowed to talk to him again, I forbid it. What is a 16-year-old girl going to do but be like, ooh, bet, I will be talking to this boy. So Kathy bats her little eyelashes at Nellie and she's like, hey, Nellie, so if I can't tell Linton that I'm not going to see him again, can I write him a letter letting him know that, like, I do like him, that I'm not going to forget about him, but that I just can't see him because my dad won't let me? And Nellie is like, no, you are not going to start writing letters back and forth because your dad said that you are not allowed to see him, you're not allowed to talk to him, and letters count as talking to him. She's like, but what if it's just a teeny little note? And Nellie's like, nope, no notes. No notes should be happening. So Kathy kind of like goes in a huff. And then over the next few days, she starts seeing Kathy acting weird. There's like little pieces of paper that are like sticking out of books. Anytime that Nellie's there, like Kathy will like quickly hide things. And so eventually she gets wise and she starts checking Kathy's room and she sees a huge stack of love letters back and forth between Kathy and Linton. And she's reading these letters and she's seeing how some of them look like they're probably written by a boy, but some of them are like really mature. And so it's kind of clear, it's like, how many of these are being written by Linton? How many of these are being written by Heathcliff? How many of these are Heathcliff telling Linton exactly what to write? Again, she knows Heathcliff's plan to make them fall in love. And so she's like, no, this should not be happening. This is not what we are doing. So we are burning these letters. And Kathy's like, please, no, don't burn the letters. And she's like, well, we have two options. We can burn the letters or I can tell your dad that you've been writing to this boy. And she's like, okay, fine, you can burn the letters. Can I please just have one to remember Linton by? And Nellie's like, no. She's like, or Nellie's like, yes, you can have one. She's like, well, how about two? And Nellie's like, no, I can just tell your dad. If you keep letters that I have, then I have evidence for your dad when I tell him. So Kathy lets Nellie burn these letters, and Nellie writes a note that will be sent to Wuthering Heights saying, do not ever contact Kathy again. Kathy will not continue to write to you. It is a little bit later, like we're just like weeks later, and Edgar is getting a little older, right? And so he is getting sick. And it's the end of the summer and he's getting a little sick. He's getting a little sickly. And so, Kathy is like worried about her dad. And so Nellie decides that they're going to go for a nice little summer walk, to kind of take Kathy's mind off of her dad being sick, right? And so they're on this walk and Kathy has a nice little bonnet, nice little hat, and the wind comes and it knocks the hat over this wall. And so Kathy climbs over the wall and to go get the hat, but like the way that the wall is, like the ground is higher on one side than it is the other. So when she goes over the wall, now she's got her hat, but she's not able to climb back over the wall and the gate is locked. And so Nellie is like, okay, like you wait here, I'll go get the key. And Nellie goes to go get the key and she hears voices and she's like, interesting. And she overhears that there is a man talking to Kathy. She gets closer and it's Heathcliff. And she overhears Heathcliff talking to Kathy being like, my son Linton is so sick and you not writing to him is killing him. You need to go see my son before he dies. Kathy is a little naive and she's like, oh my goodness, Nellie, like I made him sick. I need to go see Linton before he dies over at Wuthering Heights. And Nellie's like, girl, that's the dumbest excuse I've ever heard. But Kathy is concerned. So she goes with Heathcliff. Nellie comes with him to go see Linton. And Linton is kind of like, he looks bad. He looks ill, like he's not doing well. And so they're talking and Kathy is kind of with Linton and it starts off and it's a good little conversation, right? Starts off and they're happy. But as it goes over and over again, Linton starts blaming Kathy for being the reason that he's sick. And it gets worse and worse. And they're in the same parlor that Nellie watched as Catherine and Edgar, how that whole scene played out where they got proposed to. She is watching in horror, realizing that this is the exact same scene happening again. So we've got Linton who's getting more and more upset at Kathy. Kathy is pissed off. And so Kathy like pushes Linton and Linton falls to the ground. He starts like faking this coughing fit. And Kathy is about to leave the room. And Linton's like, please, please, please don't leave me. And so he turns on the waterworks and Kathy gives in and she's like, I will stay and we will be friends and I'll be back again. And so Nellie is just stuck watching as this like cycle is repeating over and over again. And it's the same things happening with the next generation, right? We've got Hareton who's being mistreated just like Heathcliff was. We have Linton who's being manipulative just like Catherine. And we've got Kathy who's here and like Linton's got his little claws into Kathy just like Catherine had her claws into Edgar. And we all know how it worked out for the parents' generation. So Nellie is watching this train wreck of the same drama is happening over and over again with the kids. Nellie finally gets Kathy out of the house and they come home and Nellie gets sick because of course everybody gets sick. So we've got Nellie who's sick and Edgar who's sick over at the Grange, and Kathy by day is hanging out and helping nurse them back to health. And then in the evenings, she's sneaking over to Wuthering Heights and she's hanging out with the boys. And Nellie kind of knows what's going on here, but like she's too sick. She can't like put a stop to it. And so Kathy is hanging out with Hareton and she's being really nasty to Hareton and saying Hareton can't read and like being like Hareton's uneducated. So Hareton is taking his anger out on Linton and Linton's getting more and more sick. So Linton's getting mad at Kathy and Kathy says, I will never see you again. But then Linton is like, well, if you don't ever see me again, you're going to make me die. You're going to be the reason that I'm sick. And so it feels like every few days, Kathy's like, I'm never coming over here ever again. And then like 3 days later, they're all friends again and she's coming back over and it's messy, messy, messy. But remember, they are 16 years old. Like, right? He's a little bit older. He's like 18. She's 16. He's like 16, 15. Like, it is teenage behavior, but it makes sense because they are teenagers. And so we just kind of are seeing this cycle and Nellie is getting a little bit better, but she's like not well enough to stop it. And so she's just kind of watching all this toxicity as Kathy is getting closer and closer with each of these boys, but it's like drama, 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 messy, messy, messy. It's not a good friendship. Finally, Nellie gets better and Nellie is able to tell Edgar what's going on. And Edgar is basically like, okay, hey, I cannot stop you from seeing this Linton boy. Clearly you like him. But if you ever want to see him, he needs to come here. I don't want you getting mixed up in this Heathcliff, Hareton, Wuthering Heights drama. So if you like Linton so much, then he needs to come here and he needs to court you like a proper young man. And I don't want you going over there. I don't want you getting mixed up into this. If I can't keep you two apart, then he needs to come here. You are never allowed to go to Wuthering Heights ever again. I mean it. We are cutting to the present day. And remember, Lockwood has been sick, as Nellie's been telling him this whole story. Lockwood is finally better, right? And Nellie says, hey, this story, where are we caught up to? We're now almost at the present. Like this whole drama thing of them like being friends again every few days, that was about a year ago. So now when she gets into the story, like that's how much time has passed over this. Now that was about last year. So Lockwood is better and Nellie's like letting him know where we're at in the timeline, just keeping in mind like, hey, we're almost to the present. Edgar is really, really sick. Edgar's like kind of on his deathbed and he's thinking about it and he's like, hey, like I just want Kathy to be happy. And so like, hey, I know I'm going to die soon. I need to get my affairs in order. I need to get my estate in order. And one thing that I need to make sure is that Kathy is taken care of. And so I give my consent for Kathy to marry Linton, but like we need to wait till they're at least 18. Like she is still 16 years old. Like they need to be of age, but like we can start letting them court properly. So Nellie, I want you to chaperone and these two can start hanging out. But again, we cannot be hanging out at Wuthering Heights. So we're going to meet on the moors outside in kind of a neutral location and kind of let these two do their thing. Dad is kind of giving his consent a little bit. He's thinking about he wants to make sure his daughter's happy. So we go to the moors and we have Linton and Linton is ill. Kathy kind of sees that Linton's being a little bit twitchy. Like he's being a little odd. Something's not right. And he kind of tells Kathy, he's like, hey, like I'm a little scared for my life and you need to marry me. And before Kathy can kind of like put those two pieces together, somebody shows up on horseback, and it's Heathcliff. And when Linton sees Heathcliff coming, he like throws himself onto Kathy, and he's like, please, oh please, you have to marry me. I'm going to die if you do not marry me. And Kathy's like, what's going on? And Nellie is like very concerned, and Heathcliff is kind of laughing it off. He's like, oh my goodness, you're such a coward, little boy. Like, why are you so afraid? Like, what's going on here? We need to get you home. And Nellie and Kathy are kind of like, hey, this is a little sus. And Linton is like refusing to go with Heathcliff. And so he's leaning on Kathy, and Kathy's like, this is weird. If he won't go with Heathcliff, Kathy's like, well, I'll walk you to Wuthering Heights. And Linton's like, that's a good idea. You should totally walk me home. And Heathcliff is like, okay. And then so Nellie's like, we can walk you nearby, but like we're not going in the house. Like this, her dad would not like it if we went in the house. And they get nearby, and Linton's leaning more and more on Kathy. He refuses to lean on Heathcliff. And so it's one of those things where Heathcliff's like, well, surely her dad won't be too mad if she just walks him in the threshold, right? And Nellie is like, I sense a trap, so I'm not going to let this girl out of my sight. And so she walks in the front door, and Heathcliff is like, Nellie, why don't you come inside too? And Nellie's like, I'm good right here outside. And he's like, no, come on in. So finally Nellie gives in, and as soon as Nellie crosses the threshold, Heathcliff slams the door, locks it, and Linton, his whole demeanor changes. He's still sick, but he's nowhere near like having a fit, like leaning too much. And Kathy is kind of like, what is going on? And Heathcliff is like, we are locking you in here until you marry my son. You will not leave our house until you two are married. And Kathy is like, we're going to get married, but like not today. And I need to go home. My dad is really, really sick. I promise I'll marry your son, but like I need to leave. And Nellie is pissed off. And so Nellie ends up locked in another room. So they're both locked in a house, but Nellie's been separated from Kathy, and she's locked in a room. 5 days later, Zilla, feeling really apologetic, like opens the door and lets Nellie out. And she sees Kathy and Linton in the living room. And again, Linton's still sick. Linton is gloating about how he has finally married Kathy and how everything Kathy has will be his when Daddy Dearest dies. And Daddy Dearest is going to die soon. And Nellie's like, oh shit. Like, Edgar's about to die any moment. He might already be dead. And like, he wanted this to happen, but he wanted it to happen when they were old enough, because Linton is not doing well himself. And so maybe there was that little bit of a chance that like maybe that he wouldn't live long enough to be 18. But now Kathy is stuck, and she's married to this sick boy, and Dad's about to die any second. And the Grange will go to Linton, but who owns Linton? Heathcliff owns Linton. So this whole thing, she's like, oh shoot, Heathcliff is about to have everything he's ever wanted. So Kathy doesn't really care at this point. Kathy just wants to go home and see her dad. So Kathy and Nellie go back to the Grange, and Edgar is on his deathbed, and he sees his daughter, and he's just overjoyed that she's alive, that she's okay. And Kathy tells her dad that like she got married, and she doesn't really tell him about like how bad it was, like about the whole like being locked in thing, because she sees her dad's in rough shape, and her dad is just happy that his daughter is going to be taken care of because she finally got married. And then Dad dies. When the dad dies, he is going to be buried right next to Kathy, like Catherine, like the mom. He wants to be buried overlooking the moors, not in the Linton plot, but nearby over with his dead wife. And so when the sexton, the guy who comes down to dig the grave, when he's going and like kind of digging the grave next to Catherine, Heathcliff shows up, and Heathcliff says that he paid the sexton to unearth Catherine's body, which is a big no-no back then. Like, you do not desecrate the dead. Absolutely not. That is foul. So he digs up the body of Catherine, and he tells Nellie that like he looked at Catherine and like she's just as beautiful as ever, even though it's been 20 years. And Nellie's like, cuckoo, okay, crazy boy. And Heathcliff says that he dug a window into her grave. He like ripped the side of her grave off, not where Edgar is buried. So we're gonna have Edgar buried here, Catherine buried here, and then there's a like her side of the grave is missing. And Heathcliff says that when he is buried, he wants to be buried next to her, and he wants his side of his grave taken off so that way they can like look at each other for eternity. And they essentially have like a double coffin, and like Edgar won't know because Edgar's got his box all covered, so he'll never know that like Heathcliff and Kathy are like essentially sharing a grave. And Nellie's like, that is so weird, my guy. You should not tell anybody that ever. But cool. Thanks for telling me. I want to go home now. And so when he goes home, like the burial has just happened, and Kathy gets no time at all before she is told, like, hey, you're coming home with us. You are married, Kathy. You should not be at the Grange. You need to be at the Heights with your husband. And Nellie is like, fine, take me with you. Like, I'll go too. And Heathcliff is like, absolutely not. Like, no uncertain terms. You are never going to see Kathy again. She belongs to my son, and therefore she belongs to me. And so the last thing that Nellie hears about Kathy is that she is living with Heathcliff and she is living with Linton. And Heathcliff makes it very clear that like she is not going to be treated well. Like, she needs to earn her keep. She's going to be cooking. She's going to be kind of working. And like Heathcliff is not going to take care of Kathy, but Kathy, Hareton, Linton, Heathcliff, and Joseph are all at the Heights, and Nellie has to stay with the Grange. Now we're kind of at present day, and Nellie is telling Lockwood like, hey, this is why any chance I get, any news that I have on Kathy, I want to know what's going on. And I have saved up money and I've bought a cottage, and all that I want to do is take her away. But all that I know is that like she's stuck there. Like, we can't have that. And so Lockwood is kind of like, yeah, okay, cool. And shortly after Kathy moved into Wuthering Heights, we had sickly little Linton, and Linton, to the surprise of no one, dies almost immediately after getting married. So Linton joins our RIP wall. Linton is dead. Nellie is just trying to get Kathy out. Nellie knows the only hope for her is if she can get her out or if she gets married again. And Heathcliff is going to mistreat her. Lockwood has healed up, and Lockwood is like, this is so messy. Like, I can't live here anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move out. I need to tell Heathcliff that I'm moving out. Like, I'm not going to spend another winter here. This whole place is just craziness. And so Lockwood moves out of the Grange. It has been a little while later. It's like the next September, and Lockwood just happens to be passing by near the moors. And so he's like, hey, I kind of want to go and check in on my good friend Nellie. She had some wacky stories. Let me go like see how she is. So he like calls on the Grange like last minute, no warning. And when he goes there, someone opens the door and he's like, hey, can I go see Nellie? And someone's like, Nellie hasn't lived here in like 6 months. Like, she's gone. She lives at Wuthering Heights now. And so he's like, interesting. Okay. So he goes and calls on Wuthering Heights. And when he's there, he kind of like, it's like, it looks different. Like, the vibes are different. It's almost happier. He's like, what's going on? And when he goes over there, he's almost expecting to see Heathcliff. And what he does is he hears Kathy, and she's reading with Hareton, and like they're being really touchy-feely. Like, he's reading this book and he's like, that's weird. This boy has no education. And like anytime he gets a word right, like Kathy's like kissing him, like rewarding him with a kiss. It's actually like really cute. And so Lockwood's like, what is going on? So he knocks on the door, and Nellie shows up, and Nellie answers, and Nellie is like, oh my goodness, hey. And Lockwood's like, hey, I was in the area. Oh, what's going on? Like, where is Heathcliff? Why are these two kind of canoodling? Like, what's going on? And Nellie, ever-present gossip, is like, oh my goodness, let me tell you everything. So, you had not been gone for very long. Like, pretty soon after you left, probably about 6 months after you left, I get a call from Heathcliff. And he had told me that I would never see Kathy again, but suddenly he wants me over there. So I love my girl Kathy. So I'm going to go and be like, if Heathcliff says I'm allowed to go to Wuthering Heights and see her, like I am absolutely going to go see her. So I went over there and I see Hareton and Kathy, and they're kind of like a little bit of a duo. Like they're kind of like enemies to lovers a little bit, right? Like Kathy was kind of ribbing on Hareton, especially in the beginning. And Nellie is like, hey, that's your cousin. Remember how this kind of like that scene happened a while ago where it's like, that's your cousin. Like, be nice to him. And Nellie kind of talks some sense into Kathy. And these two now are thick as thieves. And Hareton is like kind of buddying up with Catherine. And anytime Heathcliff tries and like to like tell Kathy off, Hareton sticks up for her. And like Kathy wants to plant some roses, and so he digs up the garden so that way she can plant some roses. And then Heath comes in, he's pissed off, and Hareton, he stands up for her, and he's like, you can't treat her this way. Like she is a good person, like we like her. And so Kathy and Hareton now are like thick as thieves. Kathy is starting to teach Hareton how to read. She's trying to educate him. And so like these two now have like kind of ganged up on Heathcliff. And while Nellie is watching, Heathcliff is kind of going crazier and crazier. Like he's not eating, he's not really sleeping. And he tells Nellie that anytime he sees these two, it's like watching a ghost of the past. All he can see with Hareton and Kathy is he's just watching, and it's almost like Catherine and himself, and he's being haunted by Catherine. And so he's just going crazier and crazier. He's talking about hauntings. He's kind of raving mad, and he knows he's about to die soon. And so he basically is just talking about how his revenge, like this was not worth it at all. And like, he's like, hey, Nellie, remember my wish. Remember how I wanted to die. And so make sure that I'm buried like that. And shortly thereafter, Heathcliff dies. And it's said that Heathcliff, when Nellie finds him, he's got like a smile on his face, like he's happy to be dead. And so now we are in the present, and Nellie did make sure to bury Heathcliff the way he wanted, with like that window next to each other. And so now Nellie is telling Lockwood about how the Wuthering Heights is being owned by these two, and they're about to get married. They're going to get married in a few months on New Year's Day, and that all of them are going to move to the Grange once they get married, and it's going to be like happily ever after. And Joseph, maybe his dogs, maybe a couple people will stay behind at Wuthering Heights, but like everyone else is going to the Grange as soon as they get married, and like these two are made for each other. And so she is so excited, so happy about these two. And it's they end the story by saying that every once in a while, people who live nearby talk about how they sometimes see Heathcliff's ghost. And whenever he's out there on the moors, the woman he loved is with him. And so we end at this scene of the 3 gravestones. We've got Kathy's gravestone that's kind of been overrun by moss. We've got Edgar's gravestone that's next to her, and how like it's a little bit worn. And then there's the fresh gravestone of Heathcliff's next to Kathy. And so it's the story of those 3. And so that is how our book ends. I really like it. Again, this book had me gnawing at my enclosure when I was a teenager. And so the movie is going to be completely different. I'm sure that the movie will have like essence of Wuthering Heights, but that is the final story. I would highly, highly recommend you read it. Again, this was my favorite book when I was a teenager. I was talking with my friend Mel last night, and she tried to read it as an adult, and she hated it because she's like, as a person with like a fully formed frontal lobe, this book is toxic. This book is toxic. It's so messy. It's so dramatic. And it could only happen with everyone being teenagers, living in kind of this like remote area, with nothing else. But genuinely, go ahead and read this, especially if you're younger, and like if you like don't have like kind of fully formed thoughts about like what is good and bad with like red flags and love yet. Absolutely, like don't emulate this book, but like kind of tap into your teenage self. It's a wild read. It's a wild ride. And so I hope that you like it. I hope that this helped. And let me know if there are any other kind of classic novels that you want me to kind of describe in this format in the comments below. Kind of tell me like what book do you want me to kind of do a breakdown for with kind of some of the pictures. I want to kind of stick to classic novels there, but leave some thoughts down below, and thank you for spending some time with me.